Okay, this was to be the 25th mission, which was the last mission for a tour of operations. I was in the 91st Bomb Group in the 324 Squadron. And this is the heavy bombers, and we had a white triangle A on the tail. This particular mission, we were going to Bordeaux to an aerodrome down there to bomb the airport down there. There's a bunch of German fighters there were harassing the shipping out there in the Mediterranean Sea. So we got all loaded up, ready to go. And on the shortest runway on the field, we blew a supercharger on takeoff. Burner cracked up, just barely missed some trees at the end of the runway. You can imagine what would happen with a full load of bombs and gasoline. What we should have done right then is made a 360, come back, landed, took on one of the spare airplanes that was always there for just that purpose. We didn't. We were leading the squadron that day, and unfortunately with 3 superchargers working, well, you can't do a very good job. You use an awful lot of gas. Incidentally, this particular airplane, the Black Swan, Brittner had to ditch in the North Sea 2 missions before. We went, took off, formed our group, headed out, went down over La Police, and got a flak hit down there, which wasn't real serious. The only thing is it caused some more problems in the engine. Dropped our bombs at Bordeaux, turned around, started back, and come up the coast of France there by the Mediterranean Sea. And then as we come across the Mediterranean Sea there by the coast of France and into the Brest Peninsula, we started falling behind. We couldn't keep up. So the rest of the group took off without us. There we were flying along at 10,000 feet, dead and level. And at that particular altitude, these German 88 guns, the flak guns, are just absolutely deadly. We got one direct hit, the glass house, or the nose, come flying off, and the bombardier and the navigator window, they came right through number 3 prop. And eventually we find out after the war that they got back to England, so it evidently didn't hurt them too bad. We went into a shallow dive of about 3,000 or 4,000 feet. And when we pulled out, why, we got 3 more direct hits. And when that happened, why, the airplane come apart all over the place. Figured it was time to get out. Well, everybody started jumping out, I guess, and back there in the tail you couldn't tell or see. I started to get back out there, and my escape door in the tail, and there's a shear pin that held the door on, spring steel, and about 1/4 of an inch thick, and the damn thing was all rusted and I couldn't get out. So I put my back up against the back of the airplane there, using my feet, and pushed, and I must have got some superhuman strength, because I broke the pins. I sheared them right off. And when that happened, I went sailing right on out the door without my parachute. And luckily the door was an oblong shape, and it caught me right underneath the arms, and I didn't go clear out, just my feet from my armpits on down. I crawled back into the airplane, got my parachute, put it on, ducked sideways, and was sucked out. And immediately I was sucked out. Why, it was just the ground was so close that I just couldn't wait to open up my parachute. When I did, why, it's a wonder it just didn't tear all the panels right out of it, because we were in a pretty strong dive and on fire. But at any rate, why, it opened up and tore the hell out of my leg in the groin. And when I lit right in a German infantry camp. I never seen such a collection of weapons in all my life. 22 looks like a 88 millimeter cannon from the business end of it. But at any rate, why, when I came out, why, there was also the ball turret gunner came out just about the same time, and he also lit in the camp there with me, and I picked 57 little chunks of flak out of his back. Now they put some paper on his wounds, and that was about the size of it. But I never forget, I kind of laughed at this German colonel that was in charge of this infantry camp. He kept pointing to my watch, which was my pride and joy that I got for a graduation present. He wanted me to take it off and give it to him, and I told the German interpreter, you tell him he wants to sign a statement of charges, pay for it, he can have it. But that's personal property, it's not government property, and he don't get it. And screwy as it sounds, I run my bluff, and he didn't get it. I kept it till I got clear over to Frankfurt, Germany, where they took it away then in this solitary confinement place. Let's shut it off for a minute there. Okay, after the place there at the interrogation center there at Dulag, what they call Dulag Luft there at Frankfurt, Germany, they had us incarcerated there one block from the railroad yards, and they bombed it 3 different times, and that was quite exciting, believe me, because you never know when you have a stray bomb. I was in solitary confinement for a week, or wait a minute, 8 days, and it's just a little room. It's no bigger than most people's small bathroom in a one-room apartment, and there's no windows, there's no lights, the walls are all white, bed, and that was it. And food was terrible, damn near starved to death. And from that point on, they found out I didn't know anything or wouldn't tell them anything. Why, they shipped me in a boxcar to Clemens, Austria, to Stalag 17B, and which I was in for 17 months. And when the Germans started getting toward the end of the war, and the Russians were coming into Austria, which we were 16 kilometers due west of Vienna, we could hear the big guns and everything. They started marching us, and I marched all the way across Austria. And I'll never forget that. Just 15, 20 kilometers a day when you've been without food or anything else. It's quite a ways to march. And the weather was in the spring of the year, and it was wet and raining. Had to sleep out on the ground, cold, damp. Couldn't have any fires. Yeah, once in a while we'd sneak a fire, and if we stayed near a farmhouse someplace, why, some of the guys got pretty adept at stealing chickens without making them a noise and wring their necks. Next thing you know, you could smell food cooking, and you could take your nose and use it as a beacon and walk right over to the fire where the chicken was cooking. But at any rate, why, we soon got to a place called Braunau, and just below Berchtesgaden there, where the Enns River and the Danube River come together. And they put us in the woods out there and run some guards around us, and we had to make do with what we could. It was something else again. It was quite an experience. And when the war was all, when we saw them blowing up the bridge and everything, with the Germans blowing it up, why, here come a bunch of American tanks on the other side and build a Bailey Bridge across the river. We were all sitting on a hill cheering like a bunch of guys at a football game, never realizing that we were right in direct fire and everything else. It looked so good to us. And about that time, why, this first tank came over, and the lid popped up, and here's this dirty, grimy individual popped out. And he said, "By God, I come to rescue you boys." And this guy was a major, and he was the dirtiest thing you ever saw. He sure looked pretty. But got back out of that. Everybody went different directions trying to find food, and some of the smarter ones went out back to town there to Braunau and started raiding jewelry shops. And they didn't take the rings, they just took the settings and the gold and stuff they didn't fool with. And some of them come away from that particular mess was one hell of a lot of money. Well, when they when they finally got us simmered down, had some transportation, they moved us to this moved to this airport, and there's a big aluminum factory there that had never been touched. Big aluminum ingots outside, and you know how they shine in the sunlight. But at any rate, they had a kind of a humorous setting there too. Before the airplanes come in to take us out, and kind of a building down off the end of the runway. Well, unbeknownst to some of us, it was filled full of very pistols and shells, star shells and so on. Well, some of the guys got to cavorting around there, and they evidently had fired a very pistol shell into the building. My God, you can't believe the fireworks that went on. I never seen such a conglomeration of beautiful colors going in every direction all my life. Germans were a little bit ticked off at, but it was too late for them to do anything then. They were our prisoners. And they flew us out of there on C-47s to Le Havre, France, a place they call Lucky Strike, tent city. At that point on, why, I was on my way home.